The first time I saw her get hit, it was silent. No scream, no skid, just a grainy street camera on a wet corner, a woman in a light jacket stepping off the curb, and a black coupe coming through the red like the law had never been written for it. The hood caught her high. Her body lifted, turned, and came down wrong. Then the car drifted for half a second, corrected, and disappeared out of frame. That is how it began in my courtroom. Not with a plea, not with an apology. With a body thrown through a screen, and a room full of people pretending the obvious still needed help finding its name. I remember the mother first. The victim's mother. She did not cry when the clip played. She grabbed the edge of the bench in front of her with both hands and held onto it like the floor had moved. Beside her, the victim sat in a wheelchair, shoulders still, face fixed forward, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. Paralysis had taken her legs. It had not taken her eyes. Then I looked at the young man the state said was behind the wheel. He was 17. Tailored suit. Hair groomed like he was arriving for a scholarship photo. His father sat one row back, not next to him, behind him, where powerful men like to sit when they want distance without surrendering control. Two defense attorneys flanked the boy. Expensive voices, expensive paper, expensive confidence. The older lawyer rose before the clip had even finished. Your Honor, identity is not established. That was the first move. Not denial of the collision. Not sorrow for the woman. Not even a lie worth respecting. Just a clean, polished blade slid under the simplest truth in the room. Identity is not established. The prosecutor stood, young, tired, carrying too much file for the salary they paid him. The vehicle is registered to the defendant. The defense lawyer didn't even look at him. He looked at me. The vehicle was reported stolen hours before the incident. There it was, neat, prepared, waiting. A stolen car, a wealthy teenager, a broken woman in a wheelchair, and a courtroom suddenly asked to believe coincidence had done all the driving. I asked for the police report. It came up in the file exactly where the defense wanted it. A report entered at 11:42 p.m., less than 90 minutes after the collision. The boy had claimed his car was taken from outside a private party at a waterfront estate. Keys missing. Vehicle gone. Witnesses present. Valet staff prepared to confirm. Security guard prepared to confirm. Friends prepared to confirm he had been inside the home, upset, shocked, innocent. Money, when it lies, likes paperwork. The prosecutor asked to continue the video. I allowed it. The car vanished from frame. 10 seconds later, two people ran into the street toward the woman. A third pulled out a phone. One pointed after the fleeing vehicle. Another dropped to his knees beside her and waved both arms at traffic. The defense objected again. Prejudicial. That word gets thrown around like confetti by people who have never watched prejudice limp into court on wheels. I overruled him. The prosecutor called the first officer. Patrolman, night shift, on his face. He had arrived 4 minutes after dispatch. Rain, poor visibility. The pedestrian had been conscious for part of the response, then not. The officer had recovered broken headlamp fragments and black paint transfer. He had canvassed for cameras, taken statements, and put out a bulletin for the registered vehicle. The defense lawyer stood. Officer, when you arrived, did you personally see my client driving that car? No. Did any camera show my client's face? No. Did you locate the vehicle at the scene? No. By the time you learned the car belonged to my client, had the vehicle already been reported stolen? Yes. And there it was again. Tap, tap, tap. Not truth, pressure. Turning uncertainty into shelter. The officer stepped down. The prosecutor called the victim. The defense was up so fast his chair rolled backward. Your Honor, given her medical condition, we object to any theatrical use of sympathy. The woman in the wheelchair turned her head and looked at him. She did not blink. I said, "Sit down, counselor." He remained standing for 1 second too long. Then he sat. She gave her name. Her voice came out thin but steady. She had been walking home from an evening shift. She waited for the signal. She stepped into the crosswalk. She saw headlights too late. She remembered the windshield. A shape behind it. A young face. Both hands high on the wheel. The defense rose again. You only saw a silhouette, correct? I saw a face. In the rain? Yes. After a full day of work? Yes. While a vehicle was moving at speed? Yes. He took 2 steps closer. And you are certain, under oath, that the boy seated there is the driver? She looked at the teenager. He lowered his eyes and adjusted his cuff. I'm certain he watched me. The room went still. That line should have landed like iron. The defense attorney made sure it didn't. Watched you, he repeated. So now we're not discussing identification. We're discussing your impression of where someone looked in a fraction of a second during trauma. He turned to me as if he had cleaned something up. This is exactly why certainty is dangerous, Your Honor. No. Wealth without consequence is dangerous. Certainty was the only honest thing in the room. Still, honest is not always enough. The prosecutor next called a collision analyst. Speed estimate. Between 48 and 54, in a 30 zone. No braking before impact. Steering correction after. The analyst explained the arc, the debris field, the likely angle of departure. The defense attacked every inch of it. Likely angle. Estimate. Assumption. Not exact. Not definitive. If you've never watched a strong case get bled in teaspoons, you may think truth arrives in court and simply stands there. It doesn't. It gets interrupted. It gets dressed down. It gets called speculative by men billing $600 an hour to pretend plain facts are mysterious. By noon, the boy still looked comfortable. By lunch, his father looked bored. By afternoon, the first witness for the defense took the stand, and I saw exactly how much preparation had gone into this lie. He was the valet captain from the private party. Crisp vest, folded hands, rehearsed humility. He testified the defendant had arrived around 8:10 p.m. and surrendered his keys. He testified the car remained in the private drive until sometime after 9:30. He testified there was confusion when a line of departing guests clogged the entrance and a set of keys could not be found. He testified the young man was visibly upset. Did he accuse anyone? No, sir. Did he demand immediate help? Yes, sir. Did he report the car stolen? Yes, sir. Simple, smooth, almost elegant. The prosecutor stood for cross. Do you keep vehicle claim tickets? Yes. Was one issued for the defendant's car? Yes. Where is it? The valet blinked once. It must have been misplaced. Do you keep surveillance over the drive? Yes. Did you bring it? The system overwrote. When? I don't know. Did you speak to the defendant's father before testifying today? The defense objected so hard he nearly climbed over the table. Privilege, harassment, irrelevant. I let the prosecutor answer with his eyes. Then I sustained in part and narrowed the question. Did you meet with anyone about your testimony? Yes. Who? Our event counsel, not his own lawyer. Event counsel, the kind of phrase that comes from invitations with embossed gold edges. Then came the security guard. Same shape, same polish, same memory where it helped, fog where it hurt. Yes, he saw the boy inside the estate around 10 p.m. Yes, the boy seemed distressed. No, he could not say who took the car. No, he had not preserved gate logs. No, he did not know why the side gate camera had gone dark for maintenance. On the very night a young woman was turned into a lifetime of hardware and wheels. The prosecutor pushed as far as he could. He got little for it. Then the defense called two teenagers from the party, friends of the defendant. One said they were playing cards when the boy realized the keys were missing. Another said the boy had been by the pool for at least an hour before the theft was discovered. Kids lie badly. These two had been coached until their lies sounded adult. That made them more dangerous. The prosecutor asked one of them what game they had been playing. The witness smiled, relieved to have a simple question. Poker. How much money was on the table? The boy hesitated. Just chips. Who won? I don't remember. Who dealt? I don't remember. What was wild? The witness looked over at defense counsel. There was no wild. The prosecutor nodded. So not poker. A flicker. Small, but I saw it. The defense lawyer stood instantly. Your Honor, this is adolescent trivia. No, it was the seam in a costume. Still, a seam is not a collapse. By the end of the second day, the state had motive for flight, proof of ownership, impact science, and a victim who identified the driver. The defense had what juries too often mistake for doubt: rich polish, aligned stories, and just enough missing footage to make dishonesty look sophisticated. Then they brought in the phone records. For 1 hour, I watched Hope walk into the room and get shoved back out. The prosecutor showed the defendant's cell had connected with towers within 2 miles of the collision around the relevant time. He pushed harder. The route fit. The timing fit. The phone moved east after impact, then north toward the family's gated property. The defense lawyer smiled for the first time all week. Phones move when cars are stolen, counselor. He did not stop there. Phones are left in cup holders. Phones are borrowed by friends. Phones are tossed under seats. Phones do not identify drivers. He turned to the jury box with that smooth contempt rich men teach young. The state wants you to convict a child, Because his phone was near his own stolen car. He said child, not driver, not defendant, child. I have heard grown men buy innocence with that word. The prosecutor tried to recover. He asked whether the defendant had reported his phone stolen too. No. Whether he had remotely locked or tracked it. No. Whether he had called it. No. Then the defense stood again. Because unlike his car, the phone was with him. A few jurors wrote that down. That was the moment the case bent toward the edge. You may think this is where I stepped in and saved it. I did not. Judges do not get to rescue weak timing. We rule. We hold the line. We watch people try to bury each other with language. And if the truth is coming, sometimes all we can do is keep the door unlocked long enough for it to arrive. On the third morning, the prosecutor asked for a brief delay before resting. Defense counsel objected. Enough theater. Either he has a case or he does not. The prosecutor said he had a witness en route. Who? The defense demanded. The prosecutor checked his notes. Then he said 3 words that changed the air in the room. Lead systems engineer. The defense did not sit down. For whom? The prosecutor gave the manufacturer's name. Now the father leaned forward. Now the son looked up. Now both defense attorneys started whispering at once. I asked the prosecutor for the substance. He said the witness could testify to data generated by the vehicle on the night of the collision. The defense was already shaking his head. Impossible. Proprietary. Undisclosed. Untimely. We moved to exclude before this circus begins. The prosecutor said a late warrant had produced technical records from the manufacturer's secure server. He said the records were self-authenticating business logs and supported by an engineer who helped design the system. The defense said no such system had been disclosed in discovery. The prosecutor replied, we only learned it existed because the manufacturer fought the subpoena for 6 days. That got my attention. I asked why. The prosecutor answered carefully. Because the feature was not marketed as evidentiary. Now the defense wanted a sealed sidebar, then a sealed hearing, then a continuance, then sanctions. Then, when none of that stopped the witness from entering the courthouse, they wanted the record closed to protect trade secrets. If you are still with me, stay there. Because what came through that door was not a dramatic surprise. It was worse for them than that. It was quiet, technical, patient, the kind of truth money hates most. And if these courtroom stories matter to you, this is the point where people usually realize why I tell them. Not for spectacle. For the moment, pressure meets proof, and proof does not bow. The engineer took the stand with a plain gray suit and a binder thick enough to do damage if dropped. No showmanship, no shine, just numbers, and the kind of face that had spent too many years explaining machines to lawyers. He gave his name, his job, 12 years with the manufacturer. Specialization in driver assist systems, cabin sensing, and what he called human-machine interaction logging. The defense objected to his qualifications before the sentence was done. Denied. The prosecutor began slowly. Does the model driven by the defendant record operational data? Yes. What kind? Speed, throttle input, brake input, steering angle, seat occupancy, restraint status, Bluetooth pairing events, driver profile activation, and in certain trim packages, steering wheel biometric engagement data. One defense attorney stood, then the other. They both spoke. I shut one down with a look and let the senior lawyer try his luck. Your Honor, we renew every objection. This is beyond prejudicial. It invades privacy, exceeds scope, and risks disclosing proprietary systems irrelevant to driver identity. The engineer had not even reached the dangerous part yet, and already they were bleeding. I overruled. The prosecutor asked a question everybody in that room suddenly wanted answered, and nobody at the defense table wanted spoken aloud. What is steering wheel biometric engagement data? The engineer turned one page in his binder. In this vehicle, the steering wheel includes capacitive contact arrays and micropulse sensors. They are used to determine whether a human driver is actively gripping the wheel, to assess attentiveness, and to support certain safety functions. The defense cut in. Not identity. The engineer did not look at him. On its own, not identity. The prosecutor moved closer. Does the system associate that data with anything else? Yes. What? The active driver profile when one is selected, paired devices in the cabin, seat position memory, mirror configuration events, and time-stamped control inputs. The father stopped whispering. The teenager's mouth tightened. Not fear, calculation. The defense tried a new angle. Your Honor, the jury will be hopelessly misled by technical jargon dressed up as certainty. He was right about one thing. Jargon can hide truth just as well as it can reveal it. So I leaned forward and asked the engineer myself. Can this system tell us whether someone was physically holding that wheel at the time of impact? Yes, Your Honor. Can it tell us whether the vehicle was driverless or occupied by a living driver? Yes. Can it tell us whether a phone was connected to the car? Yes, that was enough. The room understood the shape of the cliff even before it saw the drop. The prosecutor put the timeline on the screen. 10:11 p.m. Vehicle start. 10:11:08 p.m. Driver profile 1 activated. 10:11:12 p.m. Bluetooth device connected. Evans iPhone. 10:12 p.m. Steering contact confirmed. 10:17:43 p.m. Speed 51. 10:17:44 p.m. Brake input 0. 10:17:44 p.m. Impact event. 10:17:45 p.m. Steering correction right. 10:17:46 p.m. Acceleration increased. 10:19 p.m. Voice command interface wake. 10:19:04 p.m. Outbound hands-free call attempt. 10:29 p.m. Vehicle park. The defense was on his feet before the prosecutor got to the second line. No foundation for that device label, the engineer answered before the prosecutor could. The label is user-generated during pairing. It remains stored with the device identifier. The lawyer pointed a finger, so anyone could have named a phone Evans' iPhone. Yes, the engineer said. If they also possessed that device's matching hardware identifier, pairing history, and authentication token. That finger came down slowly. The prosecutor asked whether those identifiers matched the defendant's phone records. They did. The defense asked for a recess. Denied. Then he tried to smother the thing in noise. Driver profile 1 could be selected by anyone. Yes. Seat settings could be altered by anyone. Yes. Bluetooth could remain connected from a prior drive. No. That one hit. Why not? Because the connection began at 10:11:12 p.m. with ignition, handshake, and authorization. It was not a dormant session. The defense changed lanes again. The phone could have been inside the car while a thief drove. The engineer nodded once. That is possible. I could feel the defense breathe. Then the engineer finished. But the steering wheel biometric logs show active human contact patterns throughout the drive consistent with two-handed operation, and those patterns are associated with the active driver session linked to profile 1. The defense pounced. Associated, not identified. The engineer opened another page. In this model, profile 1 had a wellness calibration created over prior driving sessions. The system uses baseline grip conductivity and pulse propagation timing for fatigue alerts. The session at issue matched that stored baseline within operational tolerance. Silence, then chaos. The father stood up, not halfway, fully, both hands on the table. His lawyer grabbed at his sleeve. The teenager said something sharp without moving his lips. The victim's mother turned toward the screen and put one hand over her mouth. The prosecutor didn't move at all. He knew if he moved too quickly, the moment might break. Defense counsel demanded a voir dire on the science, then a Fry hearing, then exclusion for undisclosed algorithmic methodology. He attacked the manufacturer. He attacked the warrant. He attacked the prosecutor. He attacked the existence of modern cars. I let him talk just long enough for the jury to hear desperation, change clothes 3 times. Then I said, sit down. He did, but he was not finished. On cross-examination, he came at the engineer hard. You're telling this court a steering wheel knows a soul? No. You're telling this jury my client's skin convicted him? No. You're selling a product. That's what this is. No. What are you telling us? The engineer looked at the screen, then back at the lawyer. I'm telling you the car kept better company than your witnesses. A few people in the room made noise before they caught themselves. The defense tried to recover. Let's discuss error rate. They discussed it. Environmental interference. They discussed it. Rain. Cabin humidity. Gloves. Sensor drift. Data corruption. Firmware updates. Server sync. Every time the defense dug a hole, the engineer answered with a document, a timestamp, a checksum, a design note, a version log. Not flashy, not angry, just brick after brick after brick. Then the prosecutor came back on redirect and asked the question that should have been asked only when the room was stretched tight enough to snap. Was there any indication in the data you reviewed that this vehicle had been stolen before the collision? No. Any door forcing event? No. Any unauthorized key event? No. Any key absent override? No. Any driver profile inconsistency suggesting an unknown operator? No. Any interruption in connection between the defendant's phone and the vehicle before impact? No. The defense attorney objected after nearly every answer. It no longer mattered. He was objecting to gravity. Then came the crack in the wall. The prosecutor recalled the valet captain. This time the man walked slower. He was shown the 10:11 vehicle start time. The party was 23 minutes away without traffic. He was shown the gate entry register placing the defendant's car outside the estate at 9:47, not 8:10. He was shown a text extracted from his phone at 11:03 from an unknown number. Keep story simple. He was asked whether event counsel had instructed him to omit the revised arrival time. The defense objected. The witness looked at the father. The prosecutor asked again. The witness swallowed and said, "Yes." The room broke open. The father leaned forward and hissed something across the table. The younger defense attorney stood so abruptly his chair tipped. The older one demanded the answer be stricken as coerced. The victim's mother began crying then, but quietly, the way people cry when the body has waited too long for permission. The prosecutor turned to the security guard. Same records, same contradictions, same pressure. He held longer, then shorter. Finally, he admitted the side gate camera had not gone down for maintenance. He had been told not to preserve it. Told by whom? He asked for water. I told him to answer. He said the father's chief of staff. The teenager looked straight ahead. No more cuff adjustment. No more polished stillness. Just a pulse jumping in his throat so hard I could see it from the bench. If you think that was the end, you have not spent much time around people raised to believe evidence is negotiable. The defense made one last run at daylight. They called their own expert, data forensics, gray beard, fine credentials. He said the manufacturer logs were complex, interpretive, and vulnerable to overstatement. He said biometric inference was not the same as direct personal identification. He said no machine should replace a human burden of proof. All of that, in a different case, might have earned space. But then the prosecutor asked him whether he had reviewed the raw session logs. He had not. Whether he had inspected the checksum validation. He had not. Whether he had tested the profile baseline matching protocol. He had not. Whether he knew the defendant's phone initiated a hands-free call 40 seconds after impact. He paused. He did not. The prosecutor displayed the call record. Uncompleted outgoing call. Contact label. Dad. The defense objected. Too late. He tried to say, the phone could have called accidentally from the seat. The engineer had already explained the steering wheel command wake sequence. The call attempt came through the in-car interface while the vehicle was moving away from the scene. The prosecutor did not raise his voice. So after the impact, while the victim lay in the street, someone driving that car, with the defendant's active profile and the defendant's connected phone, attempted to call the defendant's father, hands free from the wheel. Is that your understanding? The expert said, based on what's been shown, yes, that was the sound a case makes when it falls through itself. Closing arguments came after that, but by then, they were not building towers. They were choosing where to stand in the rubble. The prosecutor was brief. Wise move. He spoke about force, flight, fabrication. He spoke about a woman who obeyed a light and lost the use of her legs because a boy with money believed speed was freedom and lies were inheritance. Then he sat down. The defense tried dignity, then sympathy, then youth, then overreach. He reminded the jury that technology could confuse, witnesses could buckle, grief could distort, and the law required certainty. He asked them not to let anger become verdict. He was right about the law. Anger is not verdict. Proof is, when it was my turn to instruct the jury, I did not lecture. I never saw the point in decorating law when plain language will do. I told them they were not to punish wealth, nor excuse it. I told them they were not to guess. I told them lies are not evidence of guilt by themselves, but people rarely build a false roof over an empty room. I told them the case must be decided on what was proved in court, not what was whispered outside it. Then I sent them out. They came back in under 3 hours. Guilty on the hit and run. Guilty on reckless driving causing catastrophic bodily injury. Guilty on tampering and conspiracy findings referred for separate proceedings. Perjury referrals on 2 witnesses. Obstruction review for others. When the foreperson read the first guilty, the father closed his eyes. Not long, just once, hard. The boy stared at the defense table like maybe one more invoice could still fix it. Then I looked at the victim. She did not smile. She placed both hands on the wheels of her chair and rolled herself half a turn toward her mother. That was all. Some victories are too expensive for celebration. At sentencing, the defense asked for mercy. They used the boy's age, his schooling, his future, his promising life. I hear that phrase often enough, promising life, as though the woman in the chair had not been living one, as though the promise he broke did not count because it belonged to someone who crossed the street on foot. I read the file one last time before I spoke. The collision. The flight, the false report, the coached witnesses, the manufactured theft, the attempted burial of a human being under paperwork and privilege. Then I looked at the defendant. He stood there in a dark suit, hands clasped, trying very hard to resemble every second chance money had ever bought him. I said, "You did not panic for one moment. You panicked for days. No one moved," I said. "You left a woman in the road. Then you asked other people to help you leave her there." His lawyer started to stand. I raised one finger. He sat. I said, "This court has seen reckless boys before. It has seen frightened boys. It has even seen sorry boys. What stood here in this case was none of those things. What stood here was entitlement at full speed." Then I sentenced him. Prison time, license revocation, restitution, permanent record. Findings forwarded on every false witness and every hand that helped build the lie. The hammer came down once. That is all it ever needs if the room has listened. Afterward, when the courtroom cleared, I remained on the bench a moment longer than usual. The engineer packed his binder. The prosecutor closed his file, like he did not yet trust the ending. The victim's mother leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. The father left first, not fast, not slow, just without looking back. The boy followed under guard, and for the first time since I had seen him, he looked his age. People ask me sometimes whether technology is changing justice. No, people are. Machines do not make courts moral. They make lies harder to keep polished. That car did not ruin his life. He did that himself. The car only refused to lie for him. And if you want to know what I remember most, it is not the data, not the engineer, not even the verdict. It is that silent video from the first morning, the woman in the crosswalk, the car entering frame. The split second when a human being still had two working legs and no idea that someone else's arrogance was about to try to erase her. That is why I do not rush when powerful people ask for patience. That is why I do not confuse delay with fairness. And that is why when the truth finally arrives in my courtroom, I do not ask it to speak louder. I ask everyone else to stop talking.